ready to record? Are we recording? So anyway, hold on for a second.
It just keeps going in and out.
What did he say?
Nothing.
Welcome to Bonehead. So,
Man, that cocaine was good.
By the way, to our podcast listeners, that was a funny joke.
If you're one of the 5 people who watches the video, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
If you're just listening, it made no sense whatsoever.
Should we turn this off now?
Yeah.
Well, y'all keep fading in and out. Like, it's really surreal.
We thought.
And that was your first mistake.
Yeah, that was probably. Yeah. Oh, my God, we're here. We're back. And we have the combination to the air shield. Where get that off the screen?
There we go.
Ours is framed. Why does Chad?
James,
you look like the end shot of Norman Bates of Psycho.
Watermelon.
I wouldn't even hurt a fly.
Watermelon, James.
You know what I'm talking about? That's it. There you go.
Yeah, no.
Oh my God, what kind of shirt do you have
Good
on?
Lord, blink, man, blink.
The shirt. It's just a button-up shirt.
It doesn't look like that.
It's what they have all the people in the penitentiary wear.
No, well, they're usually orange.
And he's obviously recording in a hallway somewhere.
Have I ever told you about the time I had to go to the prison to pick up beds? Technically parts for beds.
Oh, in Moorhead?
Yeah. Well, no, it was West Liberty.
Oh.
I did work for Moorhead, though. What are you drinking? It looks like blood juice.
Yeah. Are you drinking tomato juice out of a Sprite?
Oh.
To our podcast listeners, James is drinking sugar-free Hawaiian Punch.
Singles to go.
It's
juicy
red.
Are those any good?
They're pretty good. Yeah, it's the only punch my doctor recommends I keep taking to the face.
He didn't say anything about shots to the face.
Yeah,
though.
No, 50 Cent says those are okay.
You got Manuel off camera, I see. Is he revving up?
Manuel.
Labor.
I don't have anything funny. That joke's old.
Weed eater.
We're all looking at you if you're once again listening.
James probably isn't looking at me. It's kind of like he's looking in the upper left-hand corner.
Okay. So
No, y'all are right here. Right here. That's where you are. I don't know if you could. Right there. That's where you are.
Yes,
right
coming at my face.
It doesn't look like a finger to me.
Where did
Jesus.
Did you buffer again?
You need to see a doctor.
Why?
Well, if it doesn't look like a finger to him, there's something wrong with his vision.
Is he buffering again?
He's
you
buffering.
Buffer. All right. So we talked about this the last time, but we'll talk episode beforehand. Every time we think we're going to do an episode, we do a different topic.
Yeah. So
At least 1 in 3 times, that's a different topic than we thought we would.
James, you didn't mix that drink very well.
No, there's a bunch of shit in the bottom of it there. You can see. It's blood, isn't it? You're drinking blood. Is it virgin blood?
Oh, yeah, like I can afford that on my salary.
Faculty.
I guess. I don't know.
But no,
fancy shindigs and
yeah,
whatnot.
so I'm assuming the topic that we said we're going to do next week. But,
but it could get kicked.
Yeah, it could get kicked because this week there was a lawsuit in Hollywood.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
It would have been last. Yeah. Who was it, Chad?
Peter Fonda.
That's right.
Oh, I thought it was that Unwin guy.
Huh?
Wasn't it that Unwin guy? I did nothing but research on that Unwin guy.
Yeah.
Is he talking about the
horrible?
No, the guy who was like in a soap opera in Australia. Was that his name? Ben Unwin?
Yeah. Ben Unwin.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
We were joking about this via text. You obviously don't remember.
No,
I don't read them. I probably just, I almost say grazed.
You replied and said, yeah, we could do him too.
I thought it was the animation guy you're talking about.
What animation guy?
The one that did Roger Rabbit. That horrible movie you like.
Oh, yeah.
No, Bob Hoskins. I would like to do a Bob.
Not Bob Hoskins, the guy that drew.
Charles.
The guy that drew Roger Rabbit died.
The artist, he's 90. He died at 90 something, right?
Well, he did die, and Chad doesn't know. That's who I thought you were talking about.
Sigh. No, I'm depressed. I don't want to do this episode no more.
Well, sure we got some bullets.
James is trying to talk
somewhere. This is Kentucky.
Hold on, real quick.
What's his name,
remind me after we're not filming anymore. I think I've got a third guest that we haven't recorded yet. I've got 2 other ones coming, but I've got a third one I need to talk
He
to you
keeps
about.
making promises.
Oh no, I've got somebody that literally has contacted me going, "When are we going to do this? When are we going to do this?" He just can't do tonight.
Of course.
So that's a hint, by the way. It's a he, so that narrows it down. So if people want to start guessing who I got.
Yeah, it's only about 49% of the population.
Have to start guessing, folks.
So Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda died. So the argument we had is I like Peter Fonda, and Peter Fonda says important films to me. Chad says,
I like The Limey.
James says,
I also like the Limey, but I like a lot of the stuff that he did. I think you have to acknowledge that he got typecast a lot if it involved a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of decent films.
My note beside the Limey says James Thomas will talk about this one.
Yeah, I treated this like we do a lot of episodes where we talk movies. I picked 3 that I really wanted to talk about.
I narrowed it down too. And really quick, before we get started,
do we want to talk about his early? Do we want to start? Do we want? Let me.
No, I wanted to do a quote. Go ahead.
Well, one of the movies I want to talk about is one of his earlier ones because I actually watched it this week. Somebody made me aware that it was on Amazon. So.
Well, before we get to the movies, let's talk about his early career.
Well, I wanted to do a quote.
Okay, you do a quote, and then I'll do that.
That's actually how I was going to start the episode before you started all that, and you started that, and I started laughing, and I forgot how I wanted to do it.
Go ahead, do your quote.
We want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to be free to ride. We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded. And we want to have a good time. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to have a good time. And we're going to have a party.
So
I think it kind of sums up a lot of his movies.
Yeah.
It's from, do you know?
No, I don't know where it's from.
It's not this one. It's this one.
The Wild Angels.
Wild Angels. First breakout role.
Yeah. Oh, but hold on. Let's get.
He was in TV and things, but
yeah, and I'm going to talk about that briefly. I do want to. I'm going to hit up a quote before I go into his early stuff. Before we get into his early years. And a lot of my information comes from a Vanity Fair article written by Donald Liebenson. I like to give the credit where the credit's due.
You never give me credit.
But this is actually from this is a quote he did in a 2008 interview from the San Luis Obispo Tribune about his acting philosophy. You don't want to be an actor, he says. You want to act. I pointed this out to my daughter, Bridget Fonda. Chad bites knuckle.
Yeah, I gotta give you
Married to also somebody simply talented. Danny Elfman,
who is not a good-looking man, so there's still hope for you too.
And who did she date before Danny Elfman? Dwight Yoakam.
I dated Dwight Yoakam.
You did,
Sharon Stone. I was in between her and Sharon. That Sharon. It's a joke for the bonehead. Yeah. Sorry.
No,
not that Sharon. Thanks, Phil.
So you want to act. I pointed this out to my daughter, Bridget Fonda, upon graduation when she said, Dad, I want to be an actor. I looked at her. I said, don't you ever say that again. It's a verb, not a noun. So, Peter Fonda. Let's start with his early career. He was born in February 23rd, 1940.
To somebody named Hank Fonda.
He was Henry Fonda's only son. His mother was a socialite Frances Ford Seymour, who committed suicide when he was at the age of 10.
I read his autobiography.
And they actually never told him how she died, and I will get to that in a brief moment.
I'm stealing all my material.
Sorry.
All right.
No, if you want to.
No. I'll chime in.
And he did not have a great relationship with his father.
No, it got better as they got older. Him and Jane both. They got better as they got older.
And that's the title of his autobiography is Don't Tell Dad.
Don't Tell Dad.
Yeah, Don't Tell Dad.
It's Don't Tell Dad.
And this is probably one of the more hardcore stories about how their relationship with his father. It was actually during a driving lesson when he confronted his father about why he never told the truth about his mother's death. And you know what his father said to him?
What?
keep your eyes on the road. And that's where the conversation ended.
They both talked about this, and I watched a documentary with Jane Fonda, and I think it all comes apart. And also, I mean, we don't really, well, we do a certain amount of gossip on the show. I do like asking people who they hated working with and who they love working with. I do. It always leads to a good story. It either leads to a good story or a really funny, awkward silence.
Yep.
So she talked about it, and she said he was such an actor that life just wasn't scripted.
Mm-hmm.
That he needed a script.
Mm-hmm.
And he needed a script to live his life.
Right.
And real life was tough.
Well, that's not most actors that they lack empathy.
I don't know that it's most actors, but I think it was true for him. He was also a fairly liberal guy.
Yeah.
Who raised two extremely liberal children. Yeah. Craig Dennis is still pissed off at Jane.
Went for Hanoi Jane?
Hanoi Jane. Anyway, so just to give you a little backstory on that. Go ahead. He had a very privileged lifestyle. Though.
Yeah. Did you know he accidentally shot himself in the stomach when he was a child and almost died 3 times on the operating table?
I think I remember it. It's been a long time, but yeah.
Now here's do you know that the connection to that story and his history with the Beatles?
No.
Okay. So later in life, he befriended the Beatles, in particular John Lennon. He told John about this story, about him almost dying 3 times on the table. And he was quoted as saying, "I know what it's like to be dead." This line ended up in the Beatles song "She Said, She Said" from the Revolver album. She Said from Revolver.
He used the Beatles in Easy Rider. There's a whole line from, I can't remember which song.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So he started his acting career in a regional theater where he won a New York Drama Critics Award for his debut on Broadway called Blood, Sweat, and Stanley Pool. He appeared in television series such as Naked City and Wagon Train.
Mm-hmm.
He made his film debut in a movie called...
His first episode of television was Naked City.
Oh,
right?
Was
That was his first film thing. That was what I could find in IMDb.
Yeah, he made his film debut as a leading man in Tammy and the Doctor with Sandra Dee in 1963. Here's a quote about his feelings towards that movie. He absolutely hated that movie. This is from a Rolling Stone magazine. "I won't renounce Tammy and the Doctor. I call it Tammy and Schmuckface because it's a bullshit movie. But it plays on the tube. I don't try to buy the negative back and not have anybody see it." So he absolutely hated Tammy and the Doctor.
I've never seen it. I know who Sandra Dee is, but I've never seen it. Have you seen it?
I've never seen it. But he is in that movie. He is very he plays it very straight. He's your basic leading man.
Right.
It's not the Peter Fonda that everybody, the liberal hippie biker that everybody knows. It was Peter Fonda, who was supposed to be the next Cary Grant type movie.
So I'm with James, and I kind of like to start out because I was looking over his entire filmography, and there's a few films that had a huge impression on me, specifically me at between 16, 15, and 18 years old, because I had such an obsession at that time with counterculture, specifically the late 60s counterculture. And
so are you going to start with?
I'd like to start with The Wild Angels, but if you want to start with it, go right ahead.
Well, I was going to start with 1964. When did Wild Angels come out?
Wild Angels came out in, I actually didn't put that down. So Easy Rider was 69, The Trip was 67.
I think it
was 65, 66 would have been Wild Angels.
I want to start with 1964.
Okay.
So if you want me to start. I want to talk about a film he did. He's not the lead in it. Warren Beatty's the lead. Mm-hmm. The cast of this film is Warren Beatty, Gene Hackman, Peter Fonda, Jessica Walter, Kim Hunter, and I'm actually forgetting the lead actress who played the title role of Lilith.
Okay.
If you've never seen Lilith, a little bit about the film. Robert Rawson, I believe I'm saying that correctly, directed it. Robert Rawson is known. He won Oscars for All the King's Men and he wrote The Hustler
Okay.
and directed it.
Paul Newman film with Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, Lilith was his last film, and he said it completely disillusioned him. If you know anything about Rawson, though, he was legitimately a communist, and renounced the Communist Party. He got called before HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee, once and pleaded the fifth. And it pretty much looked like it was going to end his career. He was called a second time and turned over 50 names. A lot of people say that he pretty much betrayed a ton of people.
Yeah.
That being said,
which would have effectively ruined his career.
But he bounced right back. He made more films after that. Matter of fact, The Hustler came after that. But Lilith was his last film. And after surviving HUAC, after surviving betraying all these people, what caused Lilith to be his last film? The actor Warren Beatty.
Oh, really?
He said Warren Beatty made that movie so hard to make that he just didn't want to do it anymore. Matter of fact, here's his quote. "It isn't worth that kind of grief. I won't take it anymore. I have nothing to say on the screen right now. Even if I never make another picture, I've got The Hustler on my record. I'm content to let that one just stand for me." Oddly enough, despite the fact he said that, he was developing, I wanted to bring this up because personal connection to us, his final film, he died before he got it made, but in 1963, the year he died, he wrote a film, had financing for it, and it was going to be called Cocoa Beach. And what he actually wanted to look at was the transient nature of the population of Cocoa Beach versus Cape Canaveral. And so it was going to follow these transient populations, basically the people who follow the surf, that follow entertainment, follow stuff like that, versus
thing. Yeah, I want to see it.
I wish I could find the script, because it's, I mean, you're looking at counterculture that, surfing was not motorcycle riding, but it was its own thing. That being said, Lilith is, Warren Beatty plays he's a veteran, and he wants to open his own asylum. He goes to work at a for-profit private asylum, and you got to remember this was made in the 60s, so it's kind of a unique thing. Lilith is a patient there. She's pretty much comatose when he gets there. Peter Fonda plays another, I guess you could say inmate, another patient that is there. And if you've never seen the film, it's very, very atmospheric. It's not a great film, but it's very, very atmospheric. Matter of fact, on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe it's got a 100% score. On IMDb, it's got a 6.9. But basically, it's not quite Psycho, obviously. It's not quite, but it's a very, very surreal, odd film where basically Warren Beatty, as this person who is, he actually uses the term occupational therapist. He wants to help people get better. But throughout the film, you very slowly start to realize there is something inherently wrong with him. It's never blatantly obvious. But he basically starts to fall in love with Lilith. You find out as the film slowly goes on that Lilith is also a master manipulator, and she was comatose, but you find out that her brother died by suicide. You start to unravel all of these different things. And
it's less about Peter Fonda than it is about Lilith and Warren Beatty.
No, she starts to manipulate the other inmates. She makes actually an older woman fall in love with her, and she makes Peter Fonda's character fall in love with her. And this leads to actually Peter Fonda
fall in love with you, sir.
Peter Fonda has some great scenes. He's an artist, and she grabs something out of his hand, and he said, "You hurt my hand." And there's an entire scene that's oddly haunting that follows that, where she grabs his hand, and he has some dialogue, and it's really engaging dialogue. I was watching it and was like, I could care less about the rest of the movie. He's a fascinating character. And Peter Fonda, again, during this timeline, was not doing the rebel, uber liberal, whatever. He was just this inmate patient. He plays it really, really well. By the end of the film, spoiler, turn it off now. It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it free. But he commits suicide. And that causes Warren Beatty's character to spiral out. Lilith becomes comatose again, and kind of the big reveal.
I feel like you could have made this shorter.
You want me to get? You want me not to give you the reveal?
I think I wanted you to give it to me 5 minutes ago, and then he could have given you the reveal.
The reveal is that Lilith also drove her brother to suicide because she wanted to have an incestuous relationship with him, and he refused, and so he committed suicide to avoid it. And she goes back into a comatose state. The last line in the film, Warren Beatty walks up realizing that he indirectly caused Peter Fonda's character suicide, Lilith to become comatose again. He actually turns himself in, and it's just a shot of the doctors that work there, and he just walks up and he goes, "Help me," and the movie ends.
So this is not related.
So it's weird. It's what now?
Oh, nothing. You were saying we wouldn't want to
broke up there. You broke up there, which is no. The reason I wanted to bring this movie up, though, is it has gained a second life. For most people, even that people like The Hustler and All the King's Men and other films that Robert Rossen is more known for, most people say those movies now are dated. They look dated. They function dated. They're still entertaining. But David Thompson, writing in the new biographical dictionary of film, citing my sources, said, this film is an oddity. The only one of Rossen's films that is passionate, mysterious, and truly personal. The other films will look increasingly dated and self-contained, but Lilith is his only film that may grow. And I watched it, and I said it's an interesting, odd little film. But Peter Fonda is in it for only for probably 15 minutes of the entire film. That's over 2 hours long, and anytime he's on screen, it's cool. So check it out.
I'm going to do this little quick blurb because it has nothing to do with Peter Fonda.
Well, neither did the last thing.
I know, but the Lilith was played by Jen Seberg.
Uh-huh.
And there's a great podcast called You Must Remember This. I've mentioned it before, where they talk about Hollywood history. And the creator of that show did a 7-parter that compared the career of Gene Seberg to that of Jane Fonda.
Uh-huh.
Which is Peter Fonda's sister. Just little weird connection
7 parts.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's really fast. Both are really fascinating.
So let's talk about Peter Fonda in a movie where he actually had some cultural impact.
That would be...
You should probably watch Lilith.
I may eventually get to it. We're going to talk about Wild Angels. By the way, Wild Angels does not hold up. I own it. It's right over there on the shelf. It was directed by this has-been called Roger Corman, who would go on to do nothing for a little company called American International Pictures.
Yeah, but didn't Peter Fonda hook up with him mainly because he could do movies that he couldn't?
That's exactly the only reason anybody hooked up with Roger Corman.
Because I think he was tired. I think Peter Fonda was tired of playing the
excuse me,
the straight like
absolutely
Hollywood actor.
And it is actually his breakout role as a Wild Angels. It was a big success. What they were basically aping on was not only counterculture, but the Hells Angels. The Hells Angels actually brought suit against them for $4 to $5 million. They ended up losing.
Really?
Yes, I think that's hilarious that the Hells Angels brought a $5 million defamation suit. The Hells Angels!
Why were they upset?
Because of the way they're portrayed in the movie. Have you ever seen it?
No, explain.
That's all they do. So it's a movie. This is literally, well, I shouldn't say literally. We say that way too much. The Angels, a San Pedro motorcycle gang, parties in the Coachella Valley's Palm Springs, Indian Canyons, California, and wreaks havoc with the local police. That's the damn plot. Basically, it has Diane Ladd. It has Nancy Sinatra. Also, Peter Fonda. These people were not cast by accident. Mm-hmm. Who are they the children of?
Oh.
Other famous people, right? Bruce Dern's in it. So is Diane Ladd. And that's.
I think you said Diane Ladd twice.
Well, that's where Laura Dern was conceived.
Oh. But
anyway, so Bruce Dern plays, I think his name is Loser.
Okay.
And he ends up getting killed, and they have to break him, or he ends up getting into jail, and they try to break him out, and he gets killed, and they have to bury him. And it's really just the last third is a big party.
Huh.
It is not a good movie. I mean, a lot of people love it. It holds a lot of cultural impact, especially at the time. Nobody really saw that. I mean, there wasn't a ton of Hells Angels movies going on.
And Peter Fonda's character was named Heavenly Blues.
Heavenly Blues, that's right. He was not the first choice for that either.
Who was the first choice?
I think the first choice was, I didn't write it down. I'm sorry, because I didn't spend a ton of time. By the way, this little bit is, if you could look at my notes right now, it's like 2 paragraphs on the Wild Angels. Once you get past the trip, the rest of these 3 pages are on another little movie he did with Dennis Hopper.
I was going to say, by the way,
have you guys ever seen it?
No, I've never seen it, but I just looked. You know who else is in Wild Angels that you didn't mention?
Who?
Take your hat off and put it on next to your heart. Dick Miller.
Yeah, Dick Miller's. Well, imagine
he plays Digger.
Huh. Yeah, Dick Miller. So, have you seen it, James?
I have. Now, it's been a long time ago because I saw that. If I remember correctly, I saw it, and at the time, somebody can fact check me on this. But Corman movies, Vincent Price, a lot of Corman Vincent Price movies did this too. But you used to be able to get them in like the Midnight Movie Collection, and there'd be 2 of them. And if I remember correctly, Wild Angels was in a 2-pack with The Trip.
Yeah, it would make sense. So The Trip is the next movie I want to talk about because I saw both of them.
But real quick, I still find it funny that there was a defamation lawsuit from the Hells Angels when basically, isn't that what the Hells Angels did anyway?
To end this because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. I had to talk about it simply because of the impact. It was a huge success.
Yeah.
What you got to remember is we go through these movies and the penultimate one of these that basically crashed the studio system in the sense of the studios no longer had control of anything that was going on out there. It is Easy Rider. But before that, these movies were being made and making a lot of money, right? The counterculture is going on. Even if you didn't like them, it was cool to get high and go watch a motorcycle movie. Paramount, MGM were not making those pictures. They weren't making these pictures for kids, right? Dr. Dolittle would have came out around this time. People had this fond memory, but I think they just have a fond memory of the fact that it was remade with Eddie Murphy, and that was it. The original one was not a hit. These movies failed, and the studio systems were crumbling. The old studio guard was going away, and nobody had any idea. And I find it fascinating. And by the way, the cool story about this is Bruce Dern.
And who played Dr. Dolittle?
Rex Harrison.
Okay, hold on.
Rex Harrison. Don't you besmirch Rex Harrison.
Hey, all I can say is look up an actress named Cheryl Landis and see what that man did to her, and you will lose all respect for that man. Continue on with Peter Fonda.
He still says
that. You don't know that. I don't have. So you don't know that. I still hang out with you.
This Bruce Dern actually got the shit kicked out of him by the Hells Angels on the street because he had the biker stuff on. He's like, I'm only in the movie, man. He didn't even ride motorcycles. He didn't know anything about motorcycles.
Wow.
Which is funny when we start talking about The Trip, another story about Bruce Dern. But he ended up getting the shit kicked out of him and knocked out by the Hells Angels. They hated this movie. It gave them a bad image. I agree with you, Chad.
Yeah.
We're talking about the same people who at Altamont with the Rolling Stones killed somebody.
Yeah.
Who were known. Of course, they also beat the shit out of Hunter S. Thompson, too.
Yeah, well, that's
true.
Did
you ever read the book?
No, I never read the book.
But
I know the story.
Because he spent 2 years with him, and he ended up beating the shit out of him as well. James, do you have another movie you'd like to talk about? I really didn't want to spend too much on
Sorry, it was
the trip.
Carol Landis that Rex Harris completely obliterated and left to the side. Happy, joy.
No, teach her how to speak? Too soon?
Rex Harris is a scumbag.
Too soon?
Have you ever heard of an actor called Errol Flynn? Read his autobiography, then talk to me about Rex Harrison. No, Lilith, I want to jump back.
We went away from Lilith.
We're moved on.
No, the reason I want to bring that one back up, and it's the same reason, is Peter Fonda was not always reviewed as a great actor. Matter of fact, actually, until
a great actor.
Yeah, he basically had one thing. He's like Brian Doyle Murray.
I disagree with Chad. Chad's wrong. There's a few good roles, and I'm going to bring one up later.
Gold.
Huh?
Yuli's Gold.
Damn it! I was
Yuli's Gold,
and that was going to be my one exception.
No.
My comment.
Good movie.
That was a film that actually got him. As far as critics were concerned, he was redeemed by that. But I wanted to bring that up because as much as he is now applauded in some ways, or was never recognized in some ways, the other part that I wanted to bring up was starting with Lilith, the Academy preserved Lilith, not Congress, but the Academy actually did it in 2000. So he is in a bunch of movies that have been deemed historically or socially significant
Oh,
for
agree.
somebody that was not at the time praised as a good actor.
Now,
So I just wanted to say that.
did either one of you have a next movie before the trip?
Nope.
Nope.
Do you have any notes about the trip? Because I can lead into it if you want to jump in.
I know who wrote it.
Yeah, I do too. So the trip was made in 1967. It was one of the follow-ups to The Wild Angels. It was also made by Corman. It was directed by Corman. It was written by a guy that would go on to be a bit actor. His name was Nicholson, something Jack.
Mm-hmm.
But the trip is about a TV director whose wife leaves him. He's going through all these things in his life, and he wants to take his buddy, who's played by Bruce Dern, convinces him to take an acid trip and explore his mind and consciousness and all that. I've never done acid. We won't talk about which one of the boneheads has done acid. It's James. It's totally James. Totally James. However, the funny
That isn't how you do acid.
there's a few. How would you know?
You do acid your way. Yeah, I said you do acid your way. I'll do it my way. I like to spit up my nose.
Out of an actual fucking car battery.
You know that's not true.
My sinus,
No.
He's macking me to car battery.
No, what he does is he cuts a hole in an orange and puts it right up. Get my vitamin D, bitches.
my sinus,
That'll be the name of this episode.
my sinuses have never been clearer.
Battery with a sub point. What?
My sinuses have never been clearer. Don't you ever doubt it.
It's because you don't have any sinuses. Anyway, had Bruce Dern in it, and there's several things about it. One of those told stories is that Roger Corman, they convinced Roger Corman, how are you going to direct this movie if you've never done acid? By the way, Bruce Dern didn't know what acid was. He had to be told and explained to. Did that not lose a little bit on your mind of what you thought Bruce Dern was?
Yeah. No, I mean, I kind of just thought Bruce Dern was your typical country guy, but is he even from the country?
I don't think so. It's like Jeff Bridges is not. You think Jeff Bridges is country, and he's so not country.
Oh, I know.
He's in Hollywood by a famous character actor. So Roger Corman did acid
Lloyd.
prepare for the movie and had a good trip, by the way. He didn't have a bad trip. He had to ask other people what it was like to have a bad trip.
Yeah, no, Bruce Dern was born in Chicago.
He's not a country actor. What were you going to say, James? James?
What? Bear. No, you know what's funny about that is though it's amazing the amount, and I have never done acid other than car batteries. But you know the amount of people that talk about bad trips and things like that, and how it's always there's no middle ground, evidently.
No, and one of the great lines is you got to turn off your mind and relax and just float down the stream, okay? I think I want to have that put on my gravestone. What do you think? You turn off your mind, relax, and just float down the stream. The trip, so I don't own it, and I actually didn't see it probably about 3 years ago, is a far superior film to me than Wild Angels. Now, it is not necessarily a completely linear plot. I don't know why James got smaller.
Yeah, James went shrinky.
Oh, James's network bandwidth is low. So it isn't the best linear plot.
It says I'm fine here.
Yeah, well, there, you're back. But you've got to watch it. Have you ever seen it, James? I'm assuming Chad hasn't. Mm-hmm. James? Have you seen the trip?
I have. It's been
I had a good time with it. I enjoy it. It was, whereas it took me 3 days to get through The Wild Angels because I felt it was boring and couldn't have cared less. The trip it doesn't have a ton of plot, but it's such an interesting film, not only through the characters and what's going on, but visually. I think it's one of Corman's better films. Now, you may hate it. And it is definitely a movie that was made in 1967.
Right.
But that's actually another part of what makes it so interesting, is that it's such a time capsule.
You're getting a time capsule of that culture.
You're getting a time capsule. It's right there, and it's frozen in time of 1967 and what it was like, and it was written by Jack Nicholson. I think that's interesting that people don't remember that he didn't necessarily start out always acting. He was producing and
Which his acting career got got catapulted because of the next movie.
The next one, yeah, that's the next one I want to talk about. James,
is there anything you would talk about before we get into the big one?
Yeah, nope. Let's do it.
All right, Easy Rider.
No, you bastard. Written by Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, and Terry Southern.
For which they were nominated for an Oscar.
Were they really?
They were nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay, and it was 30 years. It took 30 years for Peter Fonda to get invited back for Yuli's Gold, which he lost to.
I don't remember.
Jack Nicholson, as good as it gets.
Oh, that's funny.
And Jack Nicholson actually mentioned him in his acceptance speech for him.
I don't remember that. Well, let me tell you why them getting nominated for Best Screenplay is hilarious. It is heavily noted that they didn't have a screenplay before they started.
There's hardly any dialogue in most of the movie.
It was Peter Fonda's idea. I finally convinced Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper was actually thinking about quitting and becoming a teacher. Dennis Hopper was disillusioned. Dennis Hopper was also fucking insane and on drugs.
Yeah.
They were all on drugs. But Dennis Hopper was on another level.
He was on another plane.
And he's a very talented guy, but he was on drugs. They convinced him. They got the money from Bob Raffleson. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, so I want to talk about, do you have the quote about, and it's from his autobiography, once again, Don't Tell Dad, a memoir. Do you have the quote where Peter Fonda says how he came, where he got the idea?
No, go ahead. I don't have that quote.
Okay. So Peter Fonda literally said he came up with the idea for Easy Rider while he was staring at a poster for The Wild Angel. And here's his quote. He was staring at a picture of the Wild Angels, and he said, I understood immediately just what kind of motorcycle, sex, and drug movie I should make next. It would not be about 100 Hells Angels on their way to a funeral. It would be about the Duke and Jeffrey Hunter looking for Natalie Wood. I would be the Duke, and Dennis Hopper would be my Ward Bond. America would be our Natalie Wood. And after a long journey to the east across John Ford's America, what would become of us? We would be blasted to bits by narrow-minded redneck poachers at dawn just outside of Heaven, Florida. And the bed of their pickup would be full of ducks. I mean, really full of ducks.
Yeah, and it's pretty close. I don't know that I think Natalie Wood is America, but that's pretty good.
But that's his quote about it. I was sitting there reading that going, yeah, that's okay. Good for you, bud. Rock on.
You know about the motorcycles?
Yeah, they were old police motorcycles.
Yeah, they were old police motorcycles that he got at an auction. And then he got 5 guys from Watts to help build them, and he thought that was like perfect. The fact that not only is he using cop motorcycles, but he got 5 African-American men to build the motorcycles, basically giving a big FU to society at that time.
One other thing about those motorcycles, or there's 2 other things. One, Harley Davidson refused to sponsor them, wouldn't have anything to do with it because they didn't want anybody with the bad boy association with the brand. Don't you find this hilarious? Yes. 2, Dennis Hopper, and Peter Fonda talks about this in his book, more than once signed off on some papers and showed up for an auction for those bikes that don't exist. One of them was blown up. Now, it said that was actually recovered and redone by somebody, and Peter Fonda finally signed off and said that was the original Captain America bike because it was redone. But 4 of them were stolen. That's because there's one shot in the movie towards the end where they're around the campfire before the end.
With Jack Nicholson?
No, it's later, and you don't see the bikes. The reason being is because they never got to shoot it. When they finally did to shoot it, by that time, the bikes have been stolen. The ones that are left. That's the reason why you don't see the bikes. So more than once, Dennis Hopper said, no, that's the bike, to get paid by somebody so they could auction off that bike. For drugs, by the way. Just letting you know. He did clean up in the 80s.
Well, yeah.
Just letting everybody, we're big Dennis Hopper fans out here. He cleaned up and became a Republican in the 2000s.
Yeah.
He was a George Jr. supporter.
Oh, I know.
Don't you find that hilarious?
I find it absolutely hilarious.
I think it's America.
And Peter Fonda was always Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda was always Peter Fonda.
Now, the other thing too about Peter Fonda and Jack Nicholson, did you know? And I wish I had more examples of this, but I don't. In fact, the only example he gave was from the Limey, and I don't have that written down. I forgot to write it down. That he was such a good friend with Jack Nicholson that in every movie that Peter Fonda did, he made a tribute. He did some kind of tribute to Jack Nicholson in those movies.
Yeah,
Every single movie
I
he
didn't
made.
know they were that close.
Yeah, he did. He in every role he ever did, he had in some way a nod to Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
In his acting.
So here's one other interesting thing about Easy Rider. I talked about the writing. They all took credit, and all at times got mad. I think Dennis Hopper tried to sue Peter Fonda at one time, trying to get his name removed about writing the movie.
Yeah.
But most people agree that it was different points. There was never a script. Terry Southern, who was a famous writer, there was one where we can't afford you. He was like, no, dude, I'm the guy to write this movie. And if you watch some of the documentaries, Karen Black has some stories about Terry Southern, who was supposed to be insane.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote Dr. Strangelove with some guy named Kubrick. Just look that up. I can't tell the Karen Black stories because we usually don't go that hard R on here.
You've already told that Karen Black story.
About the Bush?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
You've told it in a previous episode.
Why don't you remind me?
I just did.
Why don't you shut up? American International Pictures. So Cormac was going to produce it, and American International wouldn't do it.
Wow. Why? Is there a reason?
I think it was Dennis Hopper, but keep going, James.
Well, what I was going to say is that the other thing about this, and you alluded to this earlier, was that all these other counterculture films that we talked about, the reason we don't talk about The Trip today, unless you're a movie geek, is because they were ignored. I mean, they made money, but the critics didn't pay attention. They didn't care, and Easy Rider did change that. It was the third best performing movie of that year. It got a lot of attention. And
those movies were ignored because Easy Rider kind of was it's noted as the kind of like the point in time where the old Hollywood system crumbled.
Easy Rider.
That's the quote about.
Yeah. So back when The Trip was there, the studio system was still there. It was faltering. It was on its way down. But a lot of those movies, they didn't really get the recognition because the studio system was still hanging on for life. It was still. It was in its last breath.
And for our viewers and listeners, we could go really in detail for this about you all, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. It wasn't necessarily, we're not saying Easy Rider killed it. It's just the movie that when people talk about that time, that's the one that was pinpointed. So what happened is that these studios were crumbling. They're sitting on vast acreage that's valuable now that didn't used to be. Like MGM was sold off acre by acre to development. We can talk about other parts of Universal, stuff like that. And we could go and there's plenty of podcasts out there that have spent plenty of time doing this. But Easy Rider is often the one who's like, oh, right there's the time. And then which leads us into the 70s where no one knows what they're doing. And that's the reason why there's so many interesting movies from the early 70s, because a lot of filmmakers at that time were coming of the age and they were able to get access and make their own movies without a lot of interference, because they often say this: the inmates were running the asylum. You hear it all the time when it comes to about 70s.
I was saying,
and then Star Wars and Jaws killed all that. That incorporation.
I was saying that's what Variety says, that Easy Rider started and then Jaws ended this kind of frame. But
yes,
the movie was a big hit and obviously got a lot of attention for Peter Fonda. Matter of fact, Howard Smith and the Village Voice at the time, Village Voice being a publication that was pretty well known, famously wrote that Terry Southern wrote the script, which will do for Fonda what none of his other roles did. That is, make him an enormous hero star. He comes off like a combination of Clint Eastwood and James Dean. Obviously, that didn't come to pass. But that's what the thinking was at the time, was that Peter Fonda would be the next Clint Eastwood, would be James Dean, would be burned into that hero star mentality. And that didn't happen. But they thought it would, based on Easy Rider and the way he played it there.
Do you all want to talk to anybody about George Hansen was played by Jack Nicholson, and this is also the movie that made Jack Nicholson a star.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson talks about walking into the theater, watching it, and walking out going, no, now I'm a star.
Yeah, because before that,
and it was overnight.
And then he did Going South.
I think he did that later.
I know. This is
actually a movie I like. He directed.
I know. It's on Amazon Prime. It's the movie that we're getting off topic, but Jack Nicholson is a favorite actor of mine, of many others. But
I own the one sheet for it.
Going South is the Jack Nicholson movie that I've always wanted to see, but I couldn't quite get to seeing it, and now it's on Amazon Prime, and I am watching it this weekend.
You've never seen Going
I
South?
have never seen
It's
Going
got
South.
Danny DeVito, Christopher Lloyd. It's
I
hilarious.
know, I've never seen it. I'm dying to watch. I've always wanted to watch Going South.
I can't believe you're my friend and you've never seen it.
I know.
own the freaking one sheet.
It's like I said, ever since I was a teenager, I've always wanted to see this Jack Nicholson movie, Going South, and I've never had the opportunity, and now it's mine.
Oddly enough, Columbia was going to distribute it. It's funny because we're talking about the studio system. Columbia actually distributed this film. Bob Rafelson put up most of the money.
Wow.
So AIP could have made an absolute freaking fortune with this and missed out on it.
Are we talking Going South, or are we talking Easy Rider?
Easy Rider.
Okay, just want to make sure we
Easy
got
Rider. Sam Arkoff owned AIP, said it was his biggest regret. Roger Corman talked about being his biggest regret, although Roger Corman wanted to produce it.
Yeah.
It was AIP. Rip Torn was originally going to be that character and didn't do it.
Oh my Lord, that would not have worked.
And according to Torn, Dennis Hopper
You think he was still a drunken, grumpy ass?
Yes, even to with day he died.
Yeah.
You should listen to some Gary Shandling stories about him.
Yeah, I just wonder if back then in 1969 was he worse?
Worse. According to Torn, Dennis Hopper pulled a knife on him during a pre-production meeting. On the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Hopper claimed it was Torn who pulled the knife. No shit. Rip Torn sued Hopper over defamation and won.
Wow.
So Dennis did pull the knife out on him during pre-production.
In all fairness, out of the two, I would understand Dennis
They're
Hopper.
both crazy.
They're both batshit crazy. But Dennis Hopper is the I've got a weapon and I will use it crazy.
Another good thing about, and I know this is about Peter Fonda, but there's so many good stories about the making of Easy Rider. And Easy Rider is one of my favorite movies. I do think it's one of the, if I were ever to put together a list of films I think you should see before you die, whether you like it or not, it would be on my list probably because it's such a significant film.
And
I tried showing it to my significant other who fell asleep once. Did you fall asleep during it?
I've never fallen asleep. No, no. Okay. So this is, out of the three of us, I am not a big fan of Easy Rider. There are scenes in it that I absolutely love, particularly with Jack Nicholson.
Because he became a star.
Because
he owned it.
He owned that role. Now, that being said, I wasn't a big fan of Easy Rider because there are parts where I'm just like, I feel like they don't need, like, for example, the graveyard scene. I feel like it's superfluous. It doesn't need to be there. So, but at the same time, I understand and appreciate the cultural significance of and the historical significance of filmmaking in general that Easy Rider brought, and I appreciate it for that. And I know I did not fall asleep. I've actually seen it twice because I watched it the first time and go, I didn't really care for that. Maybe I'm insane, and I watched it again. I'm like, I'm insane, but I still didn't like it.
Let me argue why the cemetery scene is so important. So first of all, that's actually shot in St. Louis. They couldn't get into a cemetery.
Nice.
And that cemetery has never been let anyone film in it since then.
Yeah.
And they shot in 16 millimeter. That's part of the film. Some of it's in 35 and some in 16. That's shot in 16 millimeter.
Just so you know, if you haven't seen the movie,
you should go out and see it.
You should go out and see it. But in the cemetery scene, they're tripping on LSD with two female companions. And
one's Karen Black, and I don't remember the other actress's name.
And they're basically just it's a big trip scene of them just freaking out of having an LSD trip in the middle of a graveyard. And with the psychedelic music playing.
So if you watch it,
there's no dialogue.
Peter Fonda melts down during it and is crying. What you don't know is Dennis Hopper told him to talk to the statue like the statue was his mother. Now, Chad, what happened to his mother?
As we mentioned earlier, she committed suicide at the age of 10.
Asked Peter to talk to the statue as if he were talking to his mother who committed suicide when he was 10. Peter didn't want to do it, as he'd never confronted his feelings about his mother, but Hopper insisted, which is why you hear Peter call the statue mother, and he states that he both loves her and hates her, which expresses his conflicting emotions. This scene persuaded Bob Dylan to allow the use of his song, It's All Right, Ma, in one of the final scenes, which contains lyrics referencing suicide. Peter told Dylan, I need to hear those words, and he agreed to it. But if you watch it, it's very powerful. It's trippy. It's different. It's probably not something you're accustomed to, and I can't imagine watching it batshit nuts in 1969.
Yeah.
You've never seen anything like it.
Right.
Nothing like it. And he is crying, and it's real.
Yeah. Which I didn't know anything about that part of it. The movie didn't have that appeal to me that other movies.
I have an attachment to it, and for some odd reason, of course, it ends like all those movies, and we'll get to Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and we could talk about a bunch of how do those movies always end, James?
monster has to die, and it's always the kids that are the monster.
The kids are the monsters, and they always get killed at the end. And it's like, woohoo, we made it! Boom.
Yeah.
At least in this one, the final line spoke about Peter Fonda as "We blew it." Now, there was supposed to be a long soliloquy there, and he refused to do it. He said, and according, once again, back to his autobiography, Dennis wanted all this of like, this is the reason, this is the reason, this is the reason, and he refused, and he would just only say he blew it. If that's true, he was right. It sums everything up. It sums the whole movie up. They went cross-country to be free. They made the perfect score. They've sold, and by the way, that's the story of the movie, is that the first of it, they're selling to some sort of record producer played by Phil Spector. He went on to do nothing.
That was Phil Spector.
Yeah, Phil Spector. Well, I didn't want to get sued.
Yeah.
Is he dead yet?
No, not dead yet.
Okay.
He doesn't have the hair anymore.
Yeah. So that's actually Phil Spector that's selling them cocaine. They originally were going to do marijuana, and they all realized there was never not to get that big score. There's no way those two bikes could handle that much marijuana. It was going to be heroin, and the only reason why that cocaine's not real is they couldn't afford that much cocaine. All the rest of that pot in the movie is all real.
Huh.
The LSD in the pot's real. If you see cocaine, that's supposedly not real because they couldn't afford that much coke.
Wonder what it was. I know it's in most movies. It's vitamin D.
So they run across this hippie commune. They go to the country and hang out with this farm family. They meet all these people as they go, and it's all about we're going to get the big score, and then we're going to go down to Mardi Gras and have a party, and then live their lives the rest of their life. And it's all about we're going to be but they're basically bullshit because they're selling. They're living the American dream of I want to get a bunch of money and go retire.
Exactly.
So that's what I love about it, is that they are the exact thing that they're bitching about through the whole movie. You see what I mean?
I see what you mean.
It's so, I know it's so simple. And James, you probably want to talk. Or maybe James doesn't want to talk. And we blew it. And at the end of it, we blew it.
Well, I mean, I don't have too much to add about Easy Rider. I wanted to mention, and I think you all have touched on it, Dennis Hopper directed Easy Rider.
Yeah.
Peter Fonda actually allegedly could have directed it. He ceded the director's chair to Hopper, according to his obituary in Variety magazine, their Variety. But I wanted to bring up, he did go on to direct stuff that most people don't know. The Hired Hand.
You want to finish off Easy Rider before we go?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One last thing. The campfire scene where he's talking about aliens, Jack Nicholson, 155 joints.
Nice.
According to legend, it was 155 joints. And one other thing, and Chad, do you want to talk about the little thing he does when he drinks? Where did he get that?
No, you tell me because I don't know.
Yeah, George Nick Jester, after taking a swig of booze, was ad-libbed by Jack Nicholson. It was stolen from a friend of his who was nicknamed Red Dog. It was supposedly a guy that was on set who was one of the production folks.
Huh.
Yeah, he stole it from them. He would do that.
Wow.
It's great. Now, go ahead. We've probably talked about Easy Rider enough. I could keep on going, but let's move on because I only have about 3 other films I want to talk about with him.
Well, I did want to bring up the movies that he directed
because there was 3.
He directed 2 years after Easy Rider. He directed a movie called The Hired Hand. When it came out, Roger Ebert described it as, let me quote this, a languorously spiritual Western about a young man who grows up into responsibility. In 2003, again, The Village Voice, in retrospect about the film, said that it was largely misappreciated when it was released 2 years after some Easy Rider, but it's a touching and absurd example of a quote-unquote hippie Western.
Yeah.
So if you've never seen it, probably
I've
should
never
check
seen
it out.
When we were doing research, I realized I've got to find it now because it's actually on some people's best movie list, and it's on a couple of the 101 or the 1001 movies you should see. Now, his other 2 directorial, not so much.
Yeah, I was going to say that they went on to say about it though that it's not as quote unquote radical as Dennis Hopper's The Last Movie,
right?
Nor as cool as Monty Hellman's Two Lane Blacktop,
right?
But it's still a film with a lot of ambition. The other two movies he directed, which you mentioned, 1973, he actually made a science fiction film called The Idaho Transfer.
Yeah.
And then the other one I want to bring up, just because it's significant, Wanda, Nevada, which was a quote unquote, quoting his obituary here, mediocre road movie.
Yep.
That being said, it's significant because it starred a young Brooke Shields, and it also starred Henry Fonda.
Yep.
And it's the only film that they appeared together in. So a little significance there.
Mm-hmm. All right. The next movie I want to talk about, there's two, and they're back to back, is Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. So a few years ago, Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez made Grindhouse. And Tarantino's part of Grindhouse is Death Proof. And they talk about a lot of road movies that I actually hadn't seen from the late 70s and the 60s. Some of them I had seen, some of them I haven't. I got on a kick, and if I couldn't find them, I bought them. So I bought Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and Vanishing Point. And I enjoyed the hell. I didn't realize what a hit it was when it came out.
Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry.
Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry was a hit. It was directed by John Hough. He's a British guy. The year before, he made a little movie that was also a success. It's over there on my wall. It's called the Hell House, The Legend of Hell House. That's the reason why in Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, Roddy McDowall has a cameo in it, and he's not even given screen credit for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's about these two guys who want to build a NASCAR car, and they rob a supermarket to get the money.
Mm-hmm.
And then hijinks ensue with Mary, who is played by, what's her name? I almost forgot. Susan George. And they go on the lam. And Vic Morrow is the cop who tracks them down in a helicopter. Now, do you guys want to hear a funny story about this? Did you see it, James? Did you find out about the Vic Morrow part of this?
No.
So Vic Morrow, for some odd reason, has been said, was terrified of helicopters and had said he'd had visions that would be the way he would die. So the only way he would do the movie is that they took out a huge insurance policy on him for helicopters. Now, why would that be interesting for Vic Morrow fans?
Because of the Twilight Zone.
He died in a helicopter on Twilight Zone, the movie, directed by John Landis.
He didn't actually die. He was in the helicopter. He was decapitated by the helicopter, if I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know if he was decapitated. Well,
let me make this.
I'm sure he died of those injuries, Chad. Yeah, okay. So we could have skipped the gore.
Let me make this 10 times worse to make Chad's comment seem a little bit more kind. Do you think those kids had visions of death by helicopter?
Oh, that's tough.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, you got me beat on that one, James. That's dark.
See, I was trying to make Chad look better. It's hard, Chad. I had to go dark.
And what we've done is forget Chad and now hate you.
Yeah.
So
See, that's what I'm here for.
And what happens at the end of Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry?
They get away until there's a train.
They get hit by an effing train.
Because they get away and they exchange looks, if I remember correctly. That's the way I remember it in my head. And then it's like, oh, we got away. And then they're going, and then bam, the train just hits them, and credit rolls.
The reason that is significant is in all these movies, these people died at the end. They always got killed. And honestly, by the time Smokey and the Bandit came out in 1977, most of these movies were played out.
Mm-hmm.
It was Smokey and the Bandit that came back and was a big success and brought it back. And nobody died at the end. Oh, sorry. I'm done now. The next one, have you guys ever seen Race with the Devil? That's another Peter Fonda movie I read.
Yes. Yeah, I was about to say RV have it.
Warren Oates from Hall and Fame?
No. Warren Oates from I Can Effing Act, and I've kicked Murray's ass with stripes.
Oh, here she comes.
He's Warren Oates. Warren Oates of James. Whose head is he going to bring?
Alfredo Garcia.
Sam Peckinpah fame.
Never seen, by the way. By the way, if you're watching Bonehead and you've never seen Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia.
It's Alfredo Garcia, inventor of the famous pasta.
Garcia.
Alfredo's a type of sauce. Alfredo's a type of sauce, not a type of pasta.
Yeah, see?
But you put it on pasta, so both of you bite me. I'm half correct.
No, you could put it on anything you want. This is America.
What do you put? Hold on. Time out. Where does James put Alfredo sauce if not on pasta?
My nipples.
Pizza. Have you never had white sauce pizza with Alfredo sauce?
No.
I had James's special white sauce.
Dude, they haven't. Even CC's makes it that way. Or sometimes.
Oh, CC. I'm
CC
sorry.
Riders.
I'm not.
Oh, see.
I don't allow myself the luxury that is CC's pizza.
You're lying.
So I've never had CC's pizza.
Well, if you come down and visit me, there's one right across the road. I tell you what, I'll make this promise on air. By the way, CC's, if you want to sponsor us, but next time you are down here, I will take you across the street to CC's. It's a buffet.
All right. So Race with the Devil was him and Warren Oates and their wives, and they're on a trip on vacation in an RV, and they witness a satanic ritual where somebody's murdered, and they are chased by Satanists for the rest of the movie. There's only one unfortunate thing about this film. It was released 7 days after another movie in 1975. That's right. It was released after Flipper.
Flipper was a show.
Well, they made a movie with it. Paul Hogan.
In the 90s.
It could have been 75.
Good Lord.
You never seen? Actually, it's not a bad movie.
Swine.
Okay. It's actually a fairly Warren Oates never delivered a bad performance, but it's a fairly.
I know he always sung Hall under the table.
Shut up. You should watch Race with the Devil.
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's better than Devil Rain. Hold on, is James big in that club?
No, I agree. But Devil Rain has one thing going for it that movie didn't have.
Travolta, Shatner, what?
No, Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, that's
actually. Set design. So you actually had I don't know, whatever his title was, Satan's good buddy doing set design. Satan's little buddy was doing set design.
Of like My Pet Monster. Satan's good buddy.
Satan's good buddy Alistair was doing set design for Devil's Reign, which, by the way, if you watch Devil's Reign, I know we're getting off topic a little bit, but if you watch Devil's Reign and look at the color scheme, I never realized how laughable the Church of Satan was in the 1970s.
Oh, it's pretty laughable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another cultural thing.
But hey, they got Sammy Davis Jr. on board.
So we're talking about our 42nd cultural thing that he was involved with.
Wait, hold on. Did you not know Sammy Davis Jr. joined the Church of Satan in the 70s?
It's called the Jewish Church. He's Jewish.
No,
I know.
Oh, my God. Lord have
mercy. He changed affiliations pretty often. Go ahead.
But anyway, back to what I was saying. That's another thing people forget. In the 70s, what was another genre, a subgenre of film? Satanism. Satan worshiping, right? And
actually,
they were all out to get us.
Yes.
Satanists everywhere. Hiding.
Satanic panic.
Satanic panic.
Which is
my son ain't gonna play Dungeons and Dragons. He's going straight to hell. Right, James? Did you go through that? Did you go through that?
I do remember, I kid you not, I do remember my mother warning us about the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. I'm not making that up. By the way, I don't know if you were going to mention it, but Peter Fonda also had a role in a pretty notable sequel.
Yeah, Future World.
Future World. And that's actually where he developed keep in mind, he made Easy Rider, and Joe gave you that 155 statistic. It wasn't until Future World, which was high profile. It was a big deal.
Film. I don't think it was a successful film. It was a big film because it was a sequel to a huge film called Westworld.
And Future World was also the inspiration for the famous theme park in Magic Kingdom.
Keep going, James.
Shut up, Chad. But the New York Times, that was the first time it was publicly reported in the New York Times that he was developing a, quote, a reputation for being difficult and drug-addled while on set.
Oh, really?
And so that was, it made the New York Times that he was getting difficult to work with in Future World. So if you think about these timelines, keep in mind, Future World, there was this public mentality that he was getting difficult to work with.
So I want to jump ahead a little bit, and I hope you guys don't mind, because 1969, James already said it was Easy Rider was the third biggest movie of 1969. Do you know what the other two were? It doesn't matter if you don't. I'm just curious.
No.
Okay, I don't either. I'm going to look it up later. But by 1981, we're talking 12 years. 12 years, from 69 to 81, he's in Cannonball Run as the lead biker in a bit role, making basically fun of himself and his image.
Right.
12 years, his career did that.
And it was because of the drug use.
I don't know if it's all the way the drug use. I don't remember him talking a ton about the drug use keeping him from roles in his book. James, have you read it? Do you know? It's been 10 years or more since I've read it. And then I'll let you.
I need to reread it.
There is by the way, in the 90s, he did a two-parter in the heat of the night, and I actually remember it. I had to watch it with Dad where he played a cult leader. So if you get a chance to watch that, that's all right. But what was it?
Sorry.
What is his next big role, gentlemen? It's a long time, but it's an actual one where people paid attention to him.
You talking about you?
Well, I was about to say he did a couple of different things. One of the ones that I want to okay, so he did early 1990s because of Bridget Fonda, and she was cast with Phoebe Cates and Tim Roth and Eric Stoltz in the independent film Bodies Rest in Motion, and he scored a bit part in that as a motorcycle rider.
We're asking if he could use the phone. He never stopped working, by the way. I don't want to interrupt.
No.
There's a ton of stuff. I'm just talking about the man was in the third biggest picture of 1969, and 12 years later, he's in a bit part in Cannonball Run. Keep going.
But he did a couple other films, and actually the independent film market, which was big in the 90s, did him a lot of good. He played a Van Helsing type role, and is it pronounced Nausea?
Nausea, I own it. It's. Have you ever seen it, guys?
No,
I loved it, and so much that
I haven't. I need to see it.
It's fun.
By the way,
he's one of the best parts of it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they're the family of Dracula who finally died, and he's basically a batshit nuts. It sounds funny, it is funny, but it's handled in a serious way, and he's still trying to kill the rest of Dracula's family.
So to answer Joe's question, the top grossing films of 1969, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Never heard of it.
Midnight Cowboy.
Loser.
Easy Rider. And then number 4 was Hello Dolly. Number 5 was Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice.
I've seen all of those.
You want to guess what number 6 was?
What?
Highest grossing film. The 6th highest grossing film of 1969.
What?
Paint Your Wagon.
Well, it's not, and it's remembered as being such a dud.
Yeah. The 6th highest grossing film of 1969. The Western musical from Clint Eastwood.
That no one remembers.
Paint Your Wagon. The Simpsons did a spoof on it.
And no one got the joke.
So anyway.
No, I
to Peter Fonda.
I've seen that movie several times because of my dad. But so Nausea he did. And let me see. There are a couple other ones. Love in a 45 and Deadfall are probably some independent films people would know him for if you're a big independent film fan. But I don't know if this is what you're getting toward. I don't know if this was what you're getting at, but before Yuli's Gold, he was in this $50 million film that some John Carpenter fellow tried to make that was a sequel to another film he did.
Yep.
You want to talk about that, Joe?
He's in Escape from L.A. as Pipeline, basically playing himself again.
Yes.
I didn't even know the character's name was Pipeline until John Carpenter tweeted the other day he was Pipeline. And then I looked at IMDb today. I was like, I'll be damned. It was actually Pipeline. So,
you didn't trust the man who wrote and directed the movie that he knew the name of the character?
Well, it just is never. I don't remember.
I'm going to fact check that shit.
I didn't bother. I didn't bother. Why would I? I, however, will defend Escape from L.A.
Why would you defend? Okay.
The first and third act. That middle is a horse shit. But it's got a great ending.
The ending's great.
The problem is the movie, and it has a great opening where they're bringing him in. If you're a fan of the original, it has a great opening and has a great ending. The problem is there's a second act.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what that is.
No, the ending's really great. The middle's awful. And then
except for Bruce Campbell's little cameo.
And then I think the first part is a rehash of the first one.
I know. It's the reason I like it. Well, and I like when they bring him off and they've got the electric chairs. If you don't want to go to LA, you can just sit in an electric chair and get lit up. I did like that part. Yeah, I like some of that. It's not a good movie. No. It's not his best film. And oh my God. So you guys know that cost, James is right, it's $50 million. $5 million of that went to Carpenter. $5 million of that went to Deborah Hill. $10 million of that went to Kurt Russell. It's only like 20-some million that was actually spent on that movie.
Wow. How much went to Peter Fonda?
Probably not as much as the other three made out. Yeah. It's not a probably good movie, although I do enjoy it from time to time. Oh, God, it does not age well. Have you seen the effects?
Yes, it does not age. That surfing scene with Peter Fonda and Kurt Russell is damn near terrible.
It is. It's bad. But Yuli's Gold, you guys want to talk about it? I loved it. I didn't know I'd love it, and I saw it in the late 90s, so I'd have probably been 18, 19 years old. But
it just 40.
I'm 40 now.
There you are.
Do you know who was supposed? Tell me about Peter Fonda getting that role. Do you know who was originally supposed to play that role?
No.
Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
Was who they originally wanted for the role, and he turned it down.
He said it was too close to the Prince of Tides role we played.
Yep. And so just to show you what was going on at the time, and Joe, if you have this, you were going to talk about it. I don't mean
to step on
toes. But what's funny about it is this was the film that again got him compared to Clint Eastwood. Variety, in their obituary for him, actually republished their review of Yuli's Gold, and this is what they said when Yuli's Gold came out. Since Peter Fonda had never been asked to give, and certainly had never delivered, an ambitious three-dimensional performance before, it must have taken courage on Nunes, the director's, part to entrust him with the role. But Fonda has responded splendidly with work that is reserved yet revealing, withholding but ultimately quite moving. With his cold eyes, erect stature, taciturn measure, and deliberate vocal cadences, it is impossible not to compare the actor here to his late father. There are also intonations in Fonda's turn that remind strongly of Clint Eastwood, but none of this takes away from the singular achievement Peter Fonda has managed after more than 35 years on the screen. It was Variety's first purely positive review of Peter Fonda.
It's so derogatory.
Yeah.
But I was sitting here thinking, God, he's not as good an actor as his dad.
No.
I was sitting here thinking it the whole time. However, Yuli's Gold is in reference to, what does Yuli make? Do you remember? It's honey. Honey. His family's falling apart. His son is mixed up with some characters that are bad news. He's been in and out of jail. And it's a story about a Florida beekeepers in Florida, because Victor Nunes is a Florida filmmaker. Most of his movies take place in Florida. And he's a small independent filmmaker. And he's just trying to keep.
He directed Police Academy 5 Miami Beach?
No, he missed that one.
Damn.
He missed that one. He was too busy worrying about the Bee movie. Not the Jerry Seinfeld one, but the Yuli's Gold one. And that's what the movie's about. And
Bee movie does not take place in Florida.
Yuli has a bad back. Yuli's trying to come to grips and realize who his son is, who his family is, and trying to make a connection. And it's a family drama. And I know I'm not selling it very well because, oh my God, what action happens? It's not, but it's a terribly engaging film. And whatever happened, what stars aligned, Peter Fonda was perfect for that role. Mm-hmm. And he was nominated for Best Actor. That he lost.
I feel like James is making a sandwich.
Do you have a sandwich? Can I have some? Is that how that 3D printer works?
Did you look at the eyes?
Can you 3D print me a sandwich?
Oh my God, could that be the title of this episode? We want 3D printed sandwiches.
3D printed sandwiches. I don't have much else to say about Yuli's Gold other than I recommend you to watch it. It's also got Patricia Richardson in it from
Home Improvement.
Home Alone. Yeah, Home Improvement.
You should see Yuli's Gold, but it did have that effect of catapulting back into the public attention. This is when his autobiography first came out, right after the success of this. And the other thing that it let him do, which I need to go back and find this, is it let him top line an NBC adaptation of The Tempest. Did you have any notes on this, Joe?
I don't have any notes on it. I saw it. There was only a couple other things I want to talk because I never saw it. I've never seen it.
I want to go back and see it because The Tempest is Shakespeare, but NBC, for some reason, decided that they wanted to adapt The Tempest, but not only adapt it, they were going to set it during the Civil War, and they chose Peter Fonda to be the headliner. Yeah. And just on that, if anybody's seen that, feel free to comment below or tag us on Twitter. if it's available on DVD, I should have searched to see if it was. But I've got to see this now because I just think, okay, Shakespeare's The Tempest, I'm familiar. Okay, Civil War, okay, I can see that. If you're casting somebody to Civil War time, who would Peter Fonda should top line that? I got to see this because you got to think the North and the South. It came out all this other stuff, but no, Peter Fonda will lead this movie. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to see it. So it had a big impact, revitalizing a lot of attention, and he gets top line some stuff again.
He was in a few big movies before he died. He was in one of them would be Ghost Rider, which he is miscast in that movie.
I want to actually. I did have some. I had some comments on that.
And some quick, quotes. Let me just say 310 to Yuma, which I actually enjoyed. And 310 to Yuma is a really good remake. By the way, the original of that is a good movie, and the remake of that is a good movie.
With Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce, right?
Russell Crowe, and it's not Guy Pearce. It's Russell Crowe and, damn it, Chad.
Guy Fieri.
No, the
Guy Fieri.
Who's Batman?
Christian Bale.
Oh,
I thought Guy Pearce was in it. I apologize.
It's Christian Bale, no. So I do recommend 310 to Yuma. Not so much Ghost Rider. Go ahead, Chad. James.
Well, I want to talk about Ghost Rider because Ghost Rider, you say it was miscast, and again,
he
got pulled. Well,
I'm not saying.
Well, no, I wanted to talk about that though because I went back and I wondered, other than obviously the motorcycle. As a matter of fact, there's an interview with him where they sought him out. They wanted him to be in Ghost Rider, and he even said something like, "Well, it's the motorcycle." He goes, "I'm not on the motorcycle." But they were making a motorcycle film, and they thought of me. But this was an interview he did at the time the movie came out with Showtime.com. And he said a couple things of interest. They asked him, about, and this goes back to your earlier quote, Chad, about acting. They asked him about acting as the devil and how much of it was him versus how much was in the script and things like that. And his response, it just struck me, was this: what most actors do, and what they should be doing, is work. We work. We are working to find character, not memorize lines. Find character. If we find that character, the lines just flow. To quote Gary Cooper, "If I know what I am doing, I do not have to act." And I thought that was interesting because, again, it goes back to his view of acting that Chad alluded to with the other quote. But the other thing that they asked him, which I was like, oh, it's really interesting because you got to think he was kind of the counterculture movement and things like that. And the interviewer stopped and just asked him, it's like, well, are you familiar with Marvel Comics and things like that? And without missing a beat, he responded, absolutely. He goes, matter of fact, the one role that I wish I was young enough to get or that I would have got was the Silver Surfer. And he goes off on a little bit of a tirade, which I thought was fascinating because if you're familiar with Marvel Comics in the 60s, the Silver Surfer, matter of fact, Stan Lee let them cancel the Silver Surfer, the old series, because they wanted to change it. And the Silver Surfer was always kind of a religious allegory in some ways. And they asked in this interview why he wanted to play the Silver Surfer. And he literally, he had a fanboy moment. I thought it was so cool in this interview. He goes, because the Silver Surfer is the only hero that cries and cries constantly. And when he cries, it's silver tears. And he said the visualization of that and what makes an all-powerful cosmic being cry. And it's always humanity. Mm. And so I was listening to this interview and I was like, oh, it's really interesting because he talked about playing the devil and they wanted him for that. And he said it was a lot of fun and he enjoyed doing it because they asked him what he brought to it. And he said, well, this role's been played forever. And he said, I have to meet the expectation of the audience for what they think the devil is. And then I have to try to add something to it. And I thought that was interesting, but I thought his commentary about the fact that he loved the 1960s version of the Silver Surfer. So the Ghost Rider, if nothing else, gave us that interview. I do like the Ghost Rider film. It's a stupid, fun popcorn movie. That character deserved a better movie, but I don't blame the people involved except for the director, which I blame on principle. Has nothing to do with how the movie came out. Anyway, so yeah, the Ghost Rider is Matter of fact, in his obituaries, oddly enough, it was Easy Rider most often. I looked at a bunch of them. It was Easy Rider and more recently Ghost Rider was the terminology used so often. I'm like, man, you skipped a bunch of movies.
So we need to. I guess we're going to finish.
We need to finish with the Steven Soderbergh film.
Yes, Steven Soderbergh. No, it wasn't his first movie, right? It was
that's Sex Lies and Videotape.
Yeah.
So Steven Soderbergh made a film called The Limey.
Which was not which kind of came and went, but now it's becoming a more underappreciated classic.
Critics loved it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the average rating on it, if you go by Metacritic, if you go back and where they catalog it, is a 93%.
And I agree. It's an amazing film.
What's funny about it, oddly enough, one of the biggest critics of it, which I thought was hilarious, was Roger Ebert, who said that it read like and I forget the name of the author, but there was an author who said all of his murder mysteries on the sunny coast of California, and he gave it 3 out of 4 stars and said it reads like one of his novels. And I was like, well, okay, good, but it's still a good movie. What's interesting to me is that Terrence Stamp plays the Limey, the protagonist, and Peter Fonda plays the guy that he suspects was involved, who is a record magnate,
right.
Who he suspects had something to do with his daughter dying. His daughter allegedly died in a car accident. He doesn't buy it. He just got out of jail, and he's going to come back and find out how his daughter died. And that's loosely the plot. What's interesting is the film's edited in a unique way. So there's parts of the dialogue that plays over other parts, and sometimes it's not even in sequence. It's really interesting. I love to quote the movie. There's tons of quotes in it that I like to use. That being said, something that I learned researching this was Peter Fonda was pretty much always locked in that role. It's actually the Terrence Stamp part that almost went to somebody else. It almost went to Michael Caine.
Yeah.
They originally thought about getting Michael Caine, which is funny because if you've ever seen the Michael Caine film Harry Brown, which I love as well, it's not exactly like The Limey, but it's about an older guy who, decides he's going to clean up the system and things like that, and it has some of the same feel as The Limey, but not quite.
That's probably my favorite Terrence Stamp performance is The Limey.
What about Zod kneeling before him?
What about Chancellor Valor?
I like The Limey. Let's not talk about The Limey, but real quick, why I like Peter Fonda's performance in that is he's not a straight up villain.
Yeah, no, he's not.
No.
He's just basically kind of like he's just a schlub.
He's a schlub, but he's also trying to live his life. Keep going, Jay.
Well, and I think that's it. I think what makes it interesting is, in some ways, Terrence Stamp, and not to give the movie away, the pivot point of the movie, the end of the film, but in some ways, when Terrence Stamp makes the discovery of what happened, he realizes that he's also to blame.
Yeah.
Like there's a feeling of, what has happened, what has came into play because of this, and what does that look like as you look at Terrence Stamp's character is named Wilson. When Wilson realizes, what his daughter was doing and how that interacted with Peter Fonda's character, which is Valentine.
And the other thing, too, to mention about The Limey is there is a lot in that movie, and it's only about 80 minutes long.
It's fairly short.
It is a very short film, but it's just one thing after another. And also, too, I know we're talking about Peter Fonda, but I have to mention one thing. When we did our character actors episodes, and as soon as we were done, I immediately regretted something, so I'm going to mention it here. Terrence Stamp's sidekick in that movie is Luis Guzman, who is one of my favorite character actors of all time, and I still beat myself up that I did not mention him in that episode.
He did so many great things, kind of Monte Cristo and all that.
I don't think they're demanding it, but Luis Guzman is amazing.
One thing I do want to point out, and this is directly related to Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda, they wanted to show what type of character his character was, what his character was made of, and they shot scenes with him with Anne Margaret, who was going to be his ex-wife. So they shot all these scenes, and it was supposed to establish them. But as Soderbergh and others went back and watched the rough cuts, they were like, these scenes are superfluous.
Yeah.
Peter Fonda's characterization already tells us what type of character he is. And while these scenes are compelling, and obviously you've got Anne Margaret, we don't need them. And so they ended up being cut.
Yeah.
Because of the strength of his performance.
Well, guys, we probably need to wrap it up.
Look, I would like to wrap on a quote.
Okay. James, you got anything to add? You good?
No, I'm good. I lost it. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Go ahead. Wrap on a cut.
So this is again from the 2008 San Luis Obispo Tribune article. He was asked a question about how long he'd want to keep working, and when he makes a film. This is a quote: "I just want to keep working. Fortunately for me, I continue to get work. Did you see the movie Waking Ned Devine? Look at that old geezer naked on a motorcycle. Shoot, I can do that until I'm in my 80s at least. What if I can't walk? Well, Lionel Barrymore did it all in a wheelchair. I would like to hear it go down this way. Cut, print, okay, that's a wrap on the film. What happened to Fonda? Oh, he's turning gray. The curtain drops, I drop. The curtain rises again, I don't get up. Whatever it is, I'd like to complete it and then act. I don't want to slip over the side without having done that."
Yeah. He actually talked about that in an interview I watched once, that he didn't want to retire. He said people retire are just stupid, that he just wanted to keep working.
Right. He loved what he did.
Yep. So, and he had, we may not all agree about the quality of the acting, I think we can all agree of the importance to American culture.
Yeah.
And then the man played a huge impact on all of us, or had a huge impact on all of us, and was vital to where America is, or what America became, specifically at such a turning point in the late 60s.
Yes.
And I think also
an outlet for young people at that time who saw themselves nowhere else other than Peter Fonda movies.
Well, and I think there's a couple other quotes that I like about him, and that's what skipped my mind earlier. So as we close out on some quotes, there's a couple things. As much as he didn't want to retire and say he didn't want to retire, when Jane Fonda said she was retiring from acting, his comment was just 2 lines. He said, "I think that's great. Now she can just be Jane." The other thing, though, that I think the other reason he became a figure to so many people, especially after his autobiography came out, which was pretty successful for an autobiography, even outside of just being an actor, is because it did open up about the difficulties between fathers and sons. And one of his quotes that kind of struck me, there's two. One is this quote: "I dig my father. I just wish he could open his eyes and dig me."
Yeah.
And then the other one, he never liked being called Mr. Fonda. And there's interviews actually where people, I think actually the Showtime.com interview, they say Mr. Fonda, and he says Peter. Just as Peter. And I think it's in his autobiography. He goes into details why he feels that way. And his exact quote is, "Whenever I hear Mr. Fonda, I have to look out over at the door to make sure he's not back."
Yeah.
And so I think that's you get into the character, and you get into, this was the first counterculture figure in some ways that was in movies, but also he was dealing with everything that happened in his life and all of that stuff. And so he became a symbol on multiple levels.
And with that, the episode's over. Please share us. We're doing really well on our audio, but we'd like to do a little bit better. And I don't know what's going on with the YouTubes. We got a little bit of an uptick last time, but please share us and subscribe and let your friends know. And don't forget, we will be at Fall Fan Fest at September 7th at our table. We've even got our new tablecloth. We're all excited about it. stop by. We may
And-
have some stickers. We may have some other things. We were trying to work on that right now. And
all
Fair Fest.
and in all fairness, if you happen to be a fan company and you're having a fall fan fest or a fan fall fest, we will also appear at that if you want to invite us and pay our way. We are not proud.
Becomes a corporate sponsor. All right. Thank you all so much.
Oddly enough, at the thing I had to attend earlier today, which won't go into details on, that's who they supplied the fans for our outdoor event. I looked over, I'm like, oh, it's home. That being said, Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Are you going to push
Toodles.
stop?
Goodbye.
Worse than James.
If you stop recording, I'll tell you that thing that I was going to tell you.
Recording so the people, I won't have to edit this later.
Farewell.
So long.
Toodaloo.
Goodbye.
Uh-huh.